the combination of my abandonment wounds with actually being abandoned during a time where I felt most vulnerable and undesirable was incredibly debilitating and painful around the time where I was reaching geriatric pregnancy years. And so I felt like
Yeah.
in my younger years, I could just snap back out of a heartbreak and buy myself a pole or take a burlesque class and like something empowering. And I couldn't find that at that time.
I want to welcome you to Identity Evolution, the podcast where we explore the moments that shape who we become. I'm your host, Lorena Schuth, somatic self-concept and identity coach, and I'm here to guide you through the raw and the real and the transformative stories of reinvention. We are kicking the Identity Evolution podcast off strong with an interview with the incredibly inspiring Veneta Nikolova. Veneta is not only my own former mentor who helped me heal from an identity-shattering heartbreak, she's also an experienced somatic shadow work coach, specializing in conscious relationships, mediation, kink, and shadow integration. I hired this woman in 2022 because I was blown away by her vulnerability. And today she's sharing her story of how she unexpectedly lost nearly all of her hair and her relationship in the same year, which opened up deep-rooted trauma, shame, and self-loathing. In this interview, she vulnerably shares her experience and how it became the catalyst for a major rebirth, leading her to reclaiming her power, embracing parts of herself that she once rejected, and attracting a deeply safe and conscious relationship into her life. Hi,
I
Veneta.
love,
It's good to see you.
likewise, I love that we were saying how long it's been since we've seen each other based on the length of our hair.
I know. It like so on theme, on brand for this episode.
Yeah.
Um, I've already introduced you in the intro of this episode, so I'm not going to go into it too much, but you basically do a lot of somatic shadow work, which I'm a big fan of.
Absolutely.
And you're a coach helping people in the love and relationship department primarily, right? Like with a bit of kink and a passion for mediation and couples coaching. Is that right?
Yep. That's, yeah.
Cool. And I wanted to have you on today to speak about your experience of losing most of your hair and going through a massive heartbreak around this time as well, and how this shifted your identity and how, in a weird way, it kind of helped you to become who you are today. And for context, for everyone who, is watching this or listening to this, you and I were connected on Instagram for a while before this all happened for you. But in pretty much the midst of this, and I believe it was 2022, I was going through my own heartbreak as well. And I saw how you navigated yours, and I loved how open and how vulnerable you were. And that's when I hired you. So to me, it was really inspiring to see you go through this, and it made me feel really safe with you as a coach and guide and mentor as well. So before we go into the full story, I would just love for you to share a little bit about your journey leading up to the hair loss. Like, who were you before all of this happened, and what did your life look like, and how did it look different?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Um, One, I love that we got to work together through that chapter and just seeing how much growth we've gone through, literally and metaphorically and literally. And what a wild experience that was, because at that time, by the end of our coaching work together, you shaved your head, and that was such a powerful, empowering experience. And I had always seen myself as somebody that's like a badass that would shave my head and do this thing. This little baddie who would go in backcountry and backpack and ride rafts and snowboard and just all of these kinds of things. But also, my branding as I started as a coach was sort of like this fairy sweetheart little, like I
Mhm.
had like fairy wings and I was all about metamorphosis. And I was teaching yoga at the time. And I think at the time that we met, I was assisting at an ayahuasca retreat center, helping people
Oh, wow.
with shadow integration, basically down in Costa Rica. And I don't know how much we want to share about that whole world. How I don't know what's off limits on the podcast, but there's all kinds of things.
Nothing is off
Okay, I
limits.
can
Nothing
swear.
is
I
off
could talk
limits.
about sex and kink and psychedelics.
We can talk everything. I don't care what YouTube says.
Yeah,
We'll talk about everything. Yeah, that's what a podcast is for, in my opinion. So
Mhm.
whatever you think is relevant to your evolution,
Yeah.
bring it.
Yeah, it's been so many different reincarnations within this one incarnation, so many different rebirths. And I feel like around 2020, I got into a particular relationship with a shadow integration coach. And I've been exploring the shadow and parts work since 2012 when I actually first had my first ayahuasca ceremony. 2011, 2012, I moved to Kauai and I was doing my yoga training at that time. Stumbled upon my first ayahuasca medicine ceremony and saw the power of using alterations of substances in a conscious way. Because prior to that, I had my ex-husband, which is a whole nother chapter story, was in a cannabis. We had started cannabis cultivation at the beginning of legalization in the country here. And I saw the substance abuse that was happened quite a bit. And so I had a retraction kind of experience about substances. And when I moved to Kauai, I was very straight edge, wanted to just do yoga, was on raw food, clean, cleansing. And then I decided to try this ayahuasca ceremony. And it brought me into this experience of using altered consciousness substances for personal development and growth. And so from there, I was very much in the light and experiencing light sort of energy and playing with this because playing with the butterfly archetype and angelic realms because your psyche is so sensitive in those realms that you don't want to bring in dark things. In fact, I was dating a filmmaker that was making horror films at one point, and I was like, I can't watch your horror film that you're seeing because my psyche is so impressionable when I'm being in these ceremonies and sitting with people in these ways. But fast forward a couple years, like a decade, while I had been exploring my coaching, my yogic practice, diving into this retreat center, supporting people through ayahuasca, I was getting curious about the shadow a little bit more and the darkness. And I started to enter into this particular relationship. Uh, at the same time that we started our relationship, a week later, the pandemic kicked off. And
What a timing.
yeah, and then I had to come back to the States from Costa Rica and ended up in the midst of LA, what felt like Babylon, the end of the world, apocalyptic times of the scrambling at the grocery stores in this city that is very
Mhm.
grungy. And we were in the kind of a grungy neighborhood. And it just felt my nervous system was so fried and scared and wrecked at the same time diving into this particular a dynamic of relationship that was we had a polarized we had polarized and dom sub dynamic, and it was the first time that I had gotten into a dom sub dynamic with intention and a masculine feminine polarized relationship with intention. And yet I still didn't quite know what I was getting myself into fully. I was very new to the world of BDSM, and I feel like I kind of got myself into a dynamic that both of us that really wasn't, it ended up turning very dysfunctional in a lot of different ways. And it wrecked my nervous system. And through that nervous system disequilibration constantly, I ended up getting sick. I think I had COVID. I never tested, but I got so, so, so sick. And about 2 months later, my hair just started falling out, falling out, falling out, falling out. By the clumps in the
Yeah.
shower, I would brush it, and it was this long. It was a little thicker than this, and it was just like every time my hands would run through, it would be falling out, and it was so traumatizing and scary.
Yeah.
And that kind
God,
of,
that's
yeah, yeah. So,
yeah. Okay, let's just pause here. So what I'm getting as well is the kind of person you were before all this happened it kind of sounds like very experimental, like
yeah,
I'll try different things, especially in the healing realms. Like although you were kind of in a different, you had explored shadow work, but you were kind of more in a different phase of your journey. Um, it sounds like you were never like afraid to try new things and to kind of dive deep and to explore and to get to know yourself and your psyche. Is that
oh
accurate?
yeah, yeah. I'd always been a little rebel, kind of running away
Yeah.
and tapping into launching myself off of cliffs on a snowboard, diving into edgy territory, experimenting with burlesque, just like, let's go, adrenaline junkie type of human, but also kind of innocent and playful at the same time. Like I was a children's librarian and nannied and did like kids camp counseling, and then I would do burlesque and like naked bike rides and so
I relate so much to this.
the duality of the innocent and sweet, motherly archetype, and then the like wild feral archetype. And so
Yeah.
to my explorations in the world of BDSM and kink aren't that big of a surprise, but they were
Yeah.
definitely incredibly illuminating. And I learned so much through that initiation that was more so than even many ayahuasca ceremonies that I had gone into. It was
Yeah.
pretty
Because
powerful.
it's raw.
Yeah.
Like there's no hiding,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
midst of the BDSM, but with the combination of the trauma response that got kicked in, which was I
Yeah.
had complex PTSD, and all the elements came together in this particular way to re-trigger childhood complex PTSD. And so while I had done a lot of, I studied psychology in school, I had done yoga, I had done plant medicine ceremonies, all of this stuff didn't really catalyze me to go into the depth of healing of my nervous system that I was forced into after experiencing this particular combination of factors that threw me into a trauma response so intense that I haven't talked about it with a lot of people, but I was experiencing suicidal ideations. I was in a very dark place. And I'm so grateful that I had the tools previously to be able to navigate my psyche in that realm where I had the tools of parts work. I had done suicide prevention hotline when I did psychology training. I had shadow integration knowledge. I had a certain degree of somatic knowledge. And so while I was engulfed in the darkness of despair regarding the combination of elements being my hair falling out and my partner abandoning me in Mexico and leaving me and breaking up with me, and then starting, seeing him online at the goth club, throwing money at strippers, and just like this particular way of expressing himself, which he had his own trauma responses, and we had our own particular dynamic that was quite triggering and triggered both of our deep trauma. But the combination of my abandonment wounds with actually being abandoned during a time where I felt most vulnerable and undesirable was incredibly debilitating and painful around the time where I was reaching geriatric pregnancy years. And so I felt like
Yeah.
in my younger years, I could just snap back out of a heartbreak and buy myself a pole or take a burlesque class and like something empowering. And I couldn't find that at that time. And The one,
same tools like didn't work the same with where
yeah,
you were.
yeah.
It's
And when you feel sexy, you're just like, I'll just get back out there and I'll be, yeah.
which can be a distraction in itself, right?
Mhm.
And you also kind of spoke about how all the tools that you had used hadn't catalyzed you into your healing as much as, this combination of, abandonment wound triggered, old childhood trauma triggered, um, the hair loss, which I'm sure there's a lot of like self-image, self-concept, body image stuff that also played into that. I often find that like we can be triggered into a rebirth, an identity shift because we choose to, but often making that choice is so much harder than being catalyzed or initiated into it through some external experience, whether that's something expansive or something that first contracts us because it's maybe traumatizing, right?
Mm.
Like your experience was. So let's go into the experience a little bit more. Do you remember, for example, the first time that you noticed that something was off? Either maybe already in your relationship at the time because you had entered this dynamic and you said it got quite dysfunctional, or also with your hair, right? When you noticed, oh my God, this is all falling out.
Mm.
Like when was the first, do you remember the first time you were like, uh-oh, and how did that feel for you? What came up for you in the beginning?
Yeah. Yeah, this was a very different type of relationship that I'd ever been in. Like prior to this, my values sit in, I was a little biohacking babe. I love um, doing yoga and herbalism and raw food and studying plant
So
medicine.
LA.
Yeah, and just very natural living style. And this man was very different than my normal experience. He was kind of like a punk rocker. He wanted me to wear the lipstick and the stuff. Like this is a little bit of that flavor, a little like gothy kind of. And I had a little gothy edge, but he gave me permission for that version of that was in my shadow, the bad girl, to come out and play. And so I was craving that outlet so much. This outlet for exploring this edgy territory of this BDSM dark goth dungeon type of territory, and he felt like a safe person I could go with to explore these shadow realms. And he's a coach too. He's in the world. I have mad respect for him in one side of the picture, and I have also things where I was like, that fucking hurt, dude. And we've cleaned up a lot of things since then, um and but he felt like somebody who is doing the personal development work, has education and knowledge in the shadow realms, and is exploring these particular ways that I was very curious about. But because I was so starved for that particular flavor of love, I was willing to kind of martyr myself or throw away the parts of myself that actually really love natural living and don't want to just get takeout from some random place. I want grass fed, organic, or I don't want to put on fake toxic deodorant and perfumes that throw off my hormones. I don't want to put on makeup all the time every morning and throw off my hormone because there's a lot of stuff, makeup has heavy metals, deodorant has certain aluminum. There's just like different things that actually really aren't very good for your health, but the beauty industry just promotes it and then it feeds off of our insecurities. And this particular man really wanted a a woman that had a specific aesthetic. And I remember him saying something like, "You're not quite it for me, but you're not what I want, but you're what I need," is what he had said to me earlier on. And in that feels that's like the red flag number one, like, oh, I'm not
Yeah.
actually what you want. So so I need to mold myself in order to become what you need. And he was like, I don't want you to change yourself. I want it to come from an authentic desire. And some part of me was like, I think maybe there is an authentic desire for me to explore these little performative anime because I do have a theatrical side of me and a little gothy kinky side of me. So there was some part of me that was I was actually like, yeah, that is authentic. but it's authentic as like a occasional play play expression, not as a day-to-day kind of living. And I think
Yeah.
the pressure of wanting to fit the mold and be desired by him, to fit the aesthetic that I know activates him and turns him on. I martyred myself. I betrayed myself here. It wasn't him, it wasn't him forcing me to do something. It was him being like, this is my preference. And I was like, I want to be your preference because I want to be desired.
It's so subtle as well when these things happen. Like, although he didn't explicitly ask you to change yourself, and you also didn't consciously say, I'm going to mold myself into a completely different person or an aspect of myself that is, that might exist, but that is so small, and I'm going to make that all of me just so you can desire me more. Even though you didn't consciously say that, just, him saying that this was his preference, that plants a seed in your mind, in your subconscious, that even if you're not consciously choosing it, there's a part of you that then wakes up and goes, but I want to be loved, and this is how I can be loved, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I was so deep in it at that point. I had relocated to LA. We had moved into the apartment together. He was being supportive actually in a lot of ways financially as I was recalibrating. My nervous system was kind of really thrown off by the pandemic. And I was rebuilding and expanding my business into new territory. I was launching some programs around the shadow feminine, and yeah, I definitely molded myself to fit the container. And I think this is where women have to be very careful, especially if they're very feminine women, where we can be very fluid and dynamic and flexible, is be careful what container you put yourself in because you will mold around that container. And so this is where our own masculine principle is really important for our own clarity of our own standards, our values, and really letting that be firm so that we can put ourselves in a container that actually aligns with those values. Like right now I'm in a dynamic that feels so nourishing to my body. He's a functional medicine practitioner, like Ayurvedic practitioner, and he's molding me because he's feeding me supplements and different things, and my nervous system and everything is just like, oh my gosh, yes, I will surrender in this container and let it shape me while still keeping a discerning. I have my inner masculine so much more on lock now because of the experience of past trauma. That's tracking
Yeah.
and like checking the holes to the container. Oh,
Yeah, sometimes it's these like most painful experiences that, and this is kind of exactly what this podcast is about, how even the most painful experiences can sometimes catalyze us to become better, right? Like better versions of ourselves. Um, so, you described a little bit about kind of what went wrong in the relationship and like what were the first like red flags and how this dynamic unfolded. Was it throughout, this hair loss experience that you woke up to this, or did you notice it before? And how did the hair loss like impact all of this?
yeah. Yeah, so we were, being in this particular kind of dynamic with this person, there were certain qualifications that he wanted me to embody.
Mhm.
One was he wanted me to be submissive, and two, he wanted me to be feminine. Um,
Did you want both of these
and
things?
I wanted to play into that, but I
Yeah.
wasn't quite conscious of the degree to that experience. Like right now, I've been working on this Love Shadows thing and created this logo of a yin yang where you're
Uh-huh.
more of, there's polarity of the black and white, but there's the dot of the other. And
Yes.
and so it's, yeah, I want to be feminine, but I want to be connected to my masculine. I want to be submissive, but I want connection to my inner dom. And I think initially that was the intention for both of us, but it ended up being this almost like it ended up in this like very stark line of black and white where I was constantly
Mm.
being criticized for not being feminine or constantly being not. And I was still kind of trying to figure out like, what exactly do you mean by feminine? And there was a whole mess there and that whole dynamic. But what I realized around that time is there was a I felt this pressure to constantly be feminine and constantly be submissive in a particular way and perform in a particular way. There was also this sort of pressure of appearance and looking in a particular way. And I think that particular pressure caused a nervous system experience where I was actually in a hypervigilant, I was constantly hypervigilant in that dynamic. And so the combination of chronic nervous system dysregulation, of hypervigilance, of performative people pleasing, combined with the experience of hormone disruption and environmental disruptions of electromagnetic and pandemic and all of that stuff, and then add the addition of getting incredibly sick. So in June, I think 2021, I got sick with, I think was COVID, and I was out bedridden. I couldn't get out of bed for a month. And prior to that, I had been kind of like, oh, it's just a little cold. I can survive it. I have a super resilient nervous system, very cocky about it. And then when I got it,
And then life humbles you.
life humbled me so much. It was like the biggest ayahuasca ceremony where I was having psychedelic visions, sweating and not being able to breathe, could barely get up out of bed, would like barely crawl out of bed to the shower. I was having such a hard time with that experience. And then survived it, survived it, and got back out and launched my Pussy Shadow, my women's program, started charging ahead, full
I
force.
remember that.
Yeah, I got a huge influx of financial resources, had confidence, like, all right, death and rebirth, I'm ready to go. Um, and then, um, and then about 2 months later, in the middle of my program, as it was going, my hair just started like falling out in the shower. And it was such a helpless feeling when I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Craft, where like the woman, it's like this witchy movie of these three women. Basically, one of them gets cursed and her hair just like starts falling out. Like you're just running your hand and it's just like chunks of hair and you're just starting to see bald spot. It's such a helpless feeling because it's one thing if you consent to, I'm going to shave my head like I'm a badass because I know it's also going to grow back, but I'm also rebelling against the patriarchal conditioning that we have as women. And it's another when you're non-consensually being taken away of your, what feels like as a woman, like your power, your femininity, and especially having this pressure to be feminine, simultaneously being in a dynamic that we were kind of open poly. So this is a
Right.
factor that I think is really important because this man was openly exploring, and we had a polarized one way poly. I wasn't able to be flirtatious with other men. That was not the agreement we
Oh,
had, but he was able to be flirtatious. As I talk about this more and more, all your audience was like, "Oh my God, this was so toxic, V. What the fuck were you thinking?" Yeah, I know. It's crazy. It's crazy how much the warped, rose-colored glasses of delusion put you in. And
I'm sure the audience has been there, maybe in not the same circumstances, but I feel like we've all been there with
I
relationships.
don't,
And that's why relationships are our biggest mirror, right? They show us our shit.
yeah, yeah, I know. And looking back, I'm just like, oh my God, what did I consent to?
Hmm.
How dysregulating that was. But there's this thing called erotic wounding, where we sometimes this like shadow kink where we get ourselves into the exact dynamic that's going to trigger our exact trauma. And so there's this like
Yeah.
kink around it of like, oh yeah, let me get into this dynamic. It's unconscious, by the way. It's not like, yeah,
Hurt
hurt
me.
me,
Yeah.
baby. It's like, oh, that man's gonna trigger my abandonment trauma and my replacement wounds and my inadequacy wounding, all of that stuff. And it did. It very much did. Having him look at these beautiful strippers and women with their long, luscious hair and lusting in these ways and wanting to explore with these women while I was going through this experience of just like, oh my God, I'm feeling my beauty and my youth is falling out of my head and I don't know if it's alopecia permanent, if I'm ever going to get my hair back, if this is my new reality. if this man is now gonna not be attracted to me, now I'm adding to this, and so this helpless feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm losing my source of adoration and love and masculine provision and all of these different things. And so this is when I started, he like bought me some wigs and I started exploring with wigs. And the wigs, it would have been so much more healing if he would have been like, V, shave your head and let me kiss your bald head. Like, I love you. I love you just as you are. That's the medicine that actually would have healed me. And
Because you also like it's such an intense thing to go through to lose your hair, especially as a woman. And like you say, it's such a helpless feeling. And I can speak to this like from the flip side because shortly after or around the same time when I was working with you, that's when I shaved my head. And that was like an intense experience. That was scary. That was a whole rebirth. And, we can talk about that if we have time as well. But that was a conscious decision. I knew that my hair would grow back. It was something that I had been thinking about for a while. And when I actually shaved it all off, it felt like liberating. But that's not the experience that you had. You were literally in the shower and you were like, oh my God, like I am losing almost like a part of me and there is nothing I can do. And I don't even know why it's happening. And there's no guarantee that it will come back. And then on top of that, you're in a partnership that doesn't feel safe, where you don't actually feel desired, fully desired at least, without that. So you're going through this very intense thing. And then at the same time, which messes with your self image and your self concept, probably, and your, sense of what it means to be a woman. And then on top of that, your partner isn't the container that you need in that time. Like that's a lot.
yeah, yeah, it was really, really intense. And it was very much, the partnership definitely magnified the experience because a year or two later, my hair actually started, I got sick again and it started falling out 2 months later. And I went into a re-traumatized experience like, oh shit, this is going to happen again. But the experience was very much a little more grounded because at that time I had just done so much work and healed a lot and healed my relationship to my ugly self, this shadow hag that I had to work through. I can talk about some of that
I would love
needed to be,
more.
yeah. And so it was kind of like, well, fuck it, like if it falls out, it falls out, but at least I love myself and I'm rooted in love so deeply. And I don't have a man that's going to reject me for this at this time. So it's just sort of like me with me. But it was,
Yeah.
when it was me with him, it was incredibly painful, incredibly volatile, and incredibly disequilibrating. And so it was falling, falling, falling. So it started falling around September, around after my birthday. And then it just kept falling out nonstop. It would be like clumps, like handfuls of clumps for within a
And
day.
this was 2021.
The end of 2021, I believe, and then New Year's 2022, we after New Year's we decided to go to Mexico and try to get away from the city. Or like maybe getting out of the city will have a positive nervous like effect on my nervous system. Let's go be somewhere warm in the winter. Let's go be around friends in this house. And at the time, for mind you, for 2 months, I had been looking at all solutions, going to the doctors, doing all this stuff. They're like, your labs look normal. Fuck normal labs. Like clearly something's not right if your hair's falling out. I started doing everything possible. I started like I had a root canal. I pulled out my root canal. I stopped dyeing my hair. I stopped just I was so like whatever might be poisoning my body, I need it out of my body like now. And part of it was I remember we were in Mexico and I was doing these full moon rituals where I would put like little prayers in a glass of water. And I had this little white heart rock that I had gotten when I was first started doing shadow work in Hawaii 10 years prior. This little white crystal rock. And I put it in the jar and I sent a prayer and I said, if this relationship is also part of what needs to go, that's causing me toxicity, please, God, take it away from me. Like, take it away from me. And the next day,
Instant manifestation.
yeah, the next day I remember putting it in my bra, like close to my heart, and I was walking around, and at one point it fell out and it broke. That heart broke, and I was, oh shit, like this is sign. This is a sign.
Yeah.
And literally 2 days later, we tried to go on this date. It was the worst date of my life. I cried all the way there. We got in a fight. I cried at the restaurant. I cried all the way back. I just felt so unheld in the way I needed to be held to like nourish my nervous system.
I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I promise the second half will be even better. If you have been enjoying this conversation and you want to embark on your own self-concept transformation, then download my free self-concept mastery blueprint to get started with your own identity evolution. The link is in the show notes. Now let's get back to the interview.
Like true masculine energy isn't domination and dictatorship. True masculine energy is nervous system calibration and safety. And I didn't feel that from that partner. And we got in the worst fight ever. And then a couple of days later, we ended it. He broke up, and then he flew out and left me in Mexico with the household of other people. That there was just so much drama in this household, and I just went into full trauma response. I was paralyzed and frozen. I didn't feel safe. Because I'm also, another element to my trauma imprint is I was an illegal immigrant when I was a kid and moved in through Mexico. That was a thing that happened in my life. And so I was in Mexico during this pandemic without my partner, without resources, going through massive heartbreak and hair loss. It was like absolute fucking trauma imprint. And I had a friend message me. He's like, girl, do you need some help? He was an EFT practitioner and helped me tap on it and helped me move an immense amount of stuff. But eventually I decided to came back to the mainland, living in this house with this man, had to pack up my stuff, and I didn't have anywhere to go. And so I was kind of homeless for a while, actually. And my friends were welcoming me in on their couches. I was so contracted in my nervous system, I couldn't even be hugged. I was like, touch and hugs was overwhelming to my system.
So frozen from everything. I mean,
Frozen.
think about like how many things happened at once. It was like one thing after another, and then you
Yeah.
were completely left alone. Like no wonder that like triggered a massive abandonment trauma, and
Yeah.
then that all happening in Mexico. There's a lot here.
Yeah.
So let's backtrack a little though about, I would love to hear a little bit more about when you mentioned your old hag,
Mm.
because we've spoken a lot about, and we'll speak about the healing as well in a bit, but
Mm-hmm.
and the integration of all of that
Mm-hmm.
and how you shifted out of that. But before we do that, I would love to know what came up for you around like your self-image
Mm-hmm.
and how you saw yourself, because yes, some of that was mirrored back through your partner at the time, and how he treated you and the triggering of that abandonment wound and all the other trauma. What came up for you surrounding your own looks, your own self-image, your own self-perception as that hair loss was happening?
Yeah. Yeah. There's the two polarity, and there's the hag and the shadow feminine, and then there's the performative theatrical burlesque. So we can go into that, how that was the medicine. But so when my hair started falling out, there was this experience where, well, one, I wasn't doing parts work in the most conscious way. I was allowing my darkness and my shadow to speak to me, but it was so abusive. I wasn't able to
Really?
disassociate with it, where that inner bully was just like, you're worthless. almost like a screaming, painful part of me that was so mean, and it would just beat me up into the point of collapse. I was just collapsing in that internal abuse of rejection and pain. Like, you're costing me a relationship, you're costing me this. And at this point, I was supposed to go to Mexico and relaunch the next round of my women's empowerment program, and I did not fucking feel empowered. I felt so broken, and I was like, there's no way that I can hold and launch a container right now. I feel I'm not in alignment. I am not in integrity. I am incredibly abusive in my own psyche. All I can do is the bare minimum to just survive. And so after I left Mexico, I came back. I was homeless. So I was basically all my, honestly, so I was under resourced because I didn't launch my next round. And my
Yeah.
friends are,
Another safety thing.
yeah, so friends were what saved me. Community is the most valuable thing that you could possibly have in life, because friends, that's when you're starving, when you're sick, when you're homeless, when you're heartbroken, when you're broke as fuck. What saved me was my community, my friends. And they were like, yeah, come stay with me, house sit a little bit here, come stay, watch my kitties. And then eventually I made it back up to Humboldt, where I had started before I went on this whole journey, in the redwoods, in this magical place. And I have a friend that had this little cabin. They called it the Beehive. And it's this tiny little cabin in the woods. And it was there that I started connecting to my hag. And
Mm.
a lot of times people, you hear these like these spiritual babes be saying, oh, your shadow feminine is your sexiness. Your shadow feminine is your bitch.
Oh, yeah.
Your shadow feminine is your erotic power. That's, yes, that's maybe part of your shadow, part of your golden shadow. But I find that
Mhm.
the real deep shadow is the thing that you would be most rejected for. Like, your sexiness, you might be rejected in the context of some kind of
Like judge.
Christian culture,
Mhm.
like, oh, you're being naughty seductress, or you're bitch, but like it's celebrated in your work environment. We want that boss babe that's discerning in your masculine. But your hag is this cultural narrative of, we have centuries of witch burnings and ostracization of the crone and the ugly. We have the witch archetype of this ugly thing, and she's cast, like, we don't want her. We want to celebrate the fertility and the mother and the sexiness and all of these badass, powerful goddess expressions of the feminine. But that version, the crone, the hag, the ugly thing, we don't want her. She's pushed away. And I remember hearing this parable about a man who went in search for truth, and he searched all over the world for truth, and he finally made his way up to like the Himalayan mountains, where everybody goes like, truth is up there. And he went into this cave, and he found the most ugly, hideous, like teeth rotting, eyes bulging, falling apart, skin sagging, lumps creature. And it's like this woman who is like, I am truth. And he's just like, oh gosh, your truth? Everybody was telling me truth is this amazing thing to look for, and now I'm finding it, and it's kind of like really uncomfortable to be with. And he sat and he studied with her for years, being with the discomfort of truth. And as he was leaving the cave, she said, tell them, when they look for me, tell them I'm young and beautiful. And then, he left. And I find that to be a really cheeky way of like truth telling a lie, that
Yeah. Yeah.
truth telling a lie, or that maybe there's a warped perception of what do we perceive as young and beautiful. And there's something beautiful about the grotesque. And I
Yeah.
felt like truth. I felt just this dysmorphia, such intense identity dysmorphia, where I don't know if you've seen, I keep quoting these witches movies, but there's this one movie, it's old school witches movie, where it's a hall of witches, and they're taking off their wigs, and they peel off their masks, and they're just underneath like their big noses and their bald heads, and they're just like, ah. That's how I felt. I looked. in the mirror, the dysmorphia, the funhouse mirror, I would look in the mirror and I would see that. Looking back now, I'm like, oh my God, I was so cute. I was just a little like, just was missing some hair, but like, I was
Yeah.
still so cute. Why was I so harsh? But the dysmorphia, you don't see yourself clearly.
So how did you like heal through all of these things? Because let's speak a little bit about the integration of this whole experience.
Mhm.
Um, because I also remember that you chose, because when I shaved my head, you were like, I'm actively choosing not to do that because that would almost be like a cop out. Um, so like why did you what was behind that decision and what was your process as a whole to like heal through all this? You already mentioned some modalities, but let's just bring that all together so then we can talk about the changes that you experienced and kind of where you are today from this and who you are today.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so in that cabin, I allowed myself to be the most hideous version of myself, where just being in the woods, and I let my hair go crazy, and so it was just this wispy, like the level of hair I had was so little, so it's just like wispy little, and I would puff it out all crazy looking, and I would wear these outfits and kind of grunge around and just express myself in these ways where I'm like, fine, if no one loves me, I will, kind of this theatrical expression of the witch, of this unlovable, undesirable,
Kind of embodied it,
embody her,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Full on swamping, just swamping, letting it be saturating in her and making friends with her where I'm gonna love her. Even if no
Yeah.
one loves her, I'm gonna choose to be with her and sit with truth in this cave up in the mountains and just be with her and sit with and move through all of the pain and grief and fear and discomfort that was there for me, and allow myself to just embrace her. And in that embrace, my hair had started actually growing back. And
Surprise.
very thick, like all at once. So it fell out at once in over the course of 3 months, and then 3 months later it started growing in all at once
Wow.
after the breakup. Like actually, as we were breaking up, it was already starting to come out because I'd been doing so many different things for my health, taking nutrients, doing all this stuff, and then it just, and so it was this. So what I found really fascinating of why I didn't want to shave my head, and I have some old clips and videos where you could actually see it, where you see the thickness of the new hair just puffing out like crazy. I know you probably know when it first starts like growing, it's like this puff ball. And then all the wispy contrast on the ends of it. It was almost like this halo of wispiness. Oh, next to the thickness, and what was kind of cool about having some of the wispiness is I could still pull the wispiness back, and it kind of kept the chaos of the puff in check. So, but I just lived with my hair up basically for months until I remember it had grown out long enough where I was shaking my head dancing at one point, and I could feel density of hair because I had no density. I couldn't feel my hair. And just being like, this is the best thing. I could actually feel the density of my hair whipping around. And one of the things that I think was the most healing for me was two things. One is this burlesque play stuff that we could talk about, and then two was for my nervous system was improvisational dance. Improvisational dance
Oh.
that helped my nervous system thaw out. Like when I said I couldn't even be touched, it was so painful to even be touched. Going to dance, rolling around on the floor, thawing out my nervous system, moving, connecting to my sensuality again, even though I didn't feel it wasn't external aesthetics, it was internal somatics where I felt myself just flowing through sensation and allowing whatever wanted to move through. And that recalibrated me, and different flavors of music, raging, rocking out, shaking my little hair around, sensuality, embodiment, grief, portals just pouring on the ground and pouring it out. And it was actually really beautiful that I did feel ugly and undesirable and unwanted so that I didn't get into another relationship. So I had this huge span of celibacy um,
Yeah,
that I got to
healing.
explore just me with me.
Wow. I think it's so interesting by the way that I mean that like the witch in me is also like of course your hair grows back when you break up. Like that makes sense. It's like energetically it's like okay, you're free of that. Now you can now you can rise again. Um but the burlesque stuff, I don't think we'll have time for. Maybe we'll need another episode at some point to go into like the whole alter ego kind of thing because I feel like you're a magician with that as well. um, but I would love to go into kind of where you are now, right? Like how did this whole journey, this whole experience
Mhm.
impact where you are now? Because from what I'm seeing, you're fucking thriving right now. It's like going into the darkness and loving that part of yourself that you felt was so disgusting was worth it, right? Like it always is. So and I would love to split this into two parts. First of all, how did this impact how you see yourself? How did it impact your identity? How is your identity now compared to who you were at the time?
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely, I feel like, could do a whole nother thing because there was a whole, I'll just say this briefly. Because I had been so submissive for so long to him, the one thing when I was in deep suicidal, like no hope for life, that inspired me, the one thing was me dressing up like Catwoman and
Mm.
this sort of dommy archetype of like sexy, but also this performative character that I could play with that I felt Veneta was so wounded and small and couldn't, but Catwoman could do these things and step up and show up and speak on stage in front of 40 men and all of these different things. And then I started diving into exploring more conscious BDSM, and there's a whole integration of empowerment of integrating my inner dom. And so over the last several years, I've really been exploring this dom archetype and what that medicine is for women actually to integrate more of their inner dom, because when you're connected to your inner dom, you know how to recognize a healthy dom externally. When you are disconnected and you don't know what that looks like, there's a shadow desire for submission, but then we end up in the wrong hands with men because there's a flavor of dominance. But we don't know how to
Yeah.
yet discern what a healthy dom versus an unhealthy dom is. So now I'm really passionate about education of these dynamics of power exchange and how to create conscious power exchange, safe, safe, conscious, safe power exchange, and really choose to create dynamics that are polarized and fun from a place of awareness and responsibility, and also this element of what is called energetic agility, that you can
Mm.
play in these different roles with your partner and choose intentionally who's going to take the lead, who's going to show up in different ways. So with the partnership that I'm exploring now, I love when he's in his dominance and showing up in these kinds of ways. He's really great at it. And he also has a little part of him that loves my inner Catwoman Dom expression
Yeah.
where he's like, "Yeah, babe, take the lead," and it doesn't feel emasculating to him. It feels sexy, it feels empowering, it feels really really sweet. And so where I feel now is more of this wound, this horrible experience that I went through really woke me up to face my deep trauma of childhood. When it came to my identity, there was a lot of stuff that was unconscious that unless this particular blessing from the divine that doesn't seem like a blessing, it was such a perfect recipe blessing that touched the exact wounds for the core of my trauma. So I then had to go and heal it, and have been in pursuit of so much somatic work, somatic therapy, just different trainings, different things like that, and dominatrix trainings and all kinds of stuff. So now I feel I have this particular lens on seeing the position of power and what it really
Yeah.
means to be responsible with power and how to wield it wisely, because there are so many fake shamans, fake shitty coaches that are not trauma informed, shitty doms, shitty
Oh
leaders,
God, yes.
shitty
Don't get
priests,
me
shitty,
started.
because and they're all doms, even DJs and people, musicians that are wielding energy. When you're wielding and holding energy, yoga teachers, gurus, all of them are doms. And if we are
You
not,
have so much responsibility.
yeah, if we are not
So much.
conscious of what, like, with great power comes great responsibility, and we don't understand how to wield that responsibility wisely, we can end up really hurting people. And some people, narcissistic type personalities, gravitate towards those positions of power without having the responsibility. They just want the benefits of being able to wield power. And so for me right now, it's just really cultivating my own power in a responsible way, sharing it with others, holding space for others, stepping into leadership again, using my voice, using my knowledge, my wisdom, my education, and passing it forward so that people can curate and get into dynamics that are playful and fun and conscious and polarized and power plays from a place of just lucid consent as opposed to unconscious trauma bonds. So that's
Oh, that is so beautiful. And yeah, I'm like I can go on and on about the whole topic that you just opened up about, narcissistic leaders because it's like my background originally was more like from the manifestation community and you see it so much there.
mhm.
You see it so much because it's like you're working with people's desires and that makes people really vulnerable, right? Like they do open up, they're desperate for change and it can lead to really toxic dynamics between like client and coach and anyways so what I'm seeing like from my perspective actually like when I met you like you were so powerful already, you were so conscious and self-aware and you had done so much integration work and now I feel like I see you as just like more of you,
Mm.
right? Like you've just become like more, I almost wanted to say more whole, but obviously not because you've never not been whole. But just this, like, this, you've taken up more space, right? That's
Mm.
what I want to say. And um, the final question that I want to ask before we go into like a little quick fire round to close it off. And I already know some of the answer to this, but I want to hear you say it anyway. But what have you been able to manifest following this? Because I'm a big believer in manifestation, not being this visualize and affirm and you'll get what you want thing, but that it's very much coded in your self-concept, your embodiment, your own realization of your wholeness, your integration, and that's what my whole body of work revolves around as well. So I'm always curious to see what is the tangible shift, if any, but I know for you, we've had some that has come out of this. I know you mentioned your new relationship already, which I've been enjoying witnessing as well on your Instagram. I'm like,
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, well, one, I've shifted my entire reality and my community and the kind of people that I'm around and I feel so happy about where I've relocated and the kind of community that I'm cultivating that is all leaders and artists and creatives and dancers. It's just saturating in more of that and holistic kind of life. And then the biggest thing is, I would say, feeling safe to actually call in the exact kind of partnership that I want. Because I think the past version of me would have probably pushed him away or sabotaged it because my nervous system couldn't actually hold it because of my erotic wounding, would have actually kept being attracted to people that weren't going to fully claim me. And this man is already talking marriage and babies. He's putting me on prenatals and who knows, like, inshallah, God willing, who knows what's going to happen. Still a lot of blessings. But the fact that I can even allow my body to feel safe, to open up to that reality and really claim it is a testament to the nervous system work and the somatic work and trauma work that was done to excavate all of the fear responses that wouldn't have even allowed me to feel safe claiming that fully.
oh, It's so beautiful to witness, honestly. I'm celebrating you so much because like I know that you were in it, when we met, and I like seeing you like bloom now and seeing how everything shifts around you. It brings me so much joy.
Um,
Beautiful. I feel like that's a beautiful place to close. But to close, I like to ask each guest three questions, which I think you'll enjoy these. One is about the past, one is about the present, and one is about what's just beyond the horizon. So the first question about the past is, if the you from a year ago watched your life for one day, what would surprise them the most?
what would surprise me the most? That I would be where I am, doing what I'm doing. I don't think she foresaw this at all. And this kind of dynamic, yeah, being almost proposed to by somebody, that kind of experience of, yeah, preparing for marriage and monogamy. That's what I think. I
Monogamy.
think previous, even just a year ago, part of me that would have been shocked that I would be excited about what I'm calling erotic monogamy. Like monogamy seems like this boring thing, but actually, I'm actually really excited about the kinkiness of monogamy. Because when you study the world of kink and like containment and certain ownership, it's
You can go deep with one person. I'm the same. I'm not a Scorpio, but I have a lot of eighth house placements. I don't even know if you're into astrology, but like that's very much coded in me, that energy. And like I can be so kinky, but I'm like, I like depth with one person. I'm like, I want to know every aspect of your being and your body and every little thing. That's like such a turn on in every way. So like I get what you're saying about like that, like making that really, really sexy. Like I think we can often, you know, there's almost like with polyamory, sometimes people are like, oh, that's more exciting, but I think monogamy can be just as exciting. Depends on how you live it.
absolutely. Yeah. I think having my nervous system feel so safe and secure allows space for so much more fun, playful, edgy territory. It just feels really good.
Yeah.
And I think my past self definitely would be surprised that I've arrived here.
Yeah. Okay, so the second question is, if you were cast in a film as your current self, what would the genre be?
Mm. I feel like some kind of
Hmm.
magical priestess, alchemy. I don't know what a genre that would be, but definitely some kind of feminine empowerment, goddess, magician, sorceress kind of thing.
I like that a lot. I would watch it. Okay, and the third question is, if the next version of you was a landscape, what scenery would you now be walking into?
Hmm, like a secret garden that is so lush with fruits, just juicy figs and sensual, just lounging naked, where you're just eating fruits off of the trees, and there's water fountains and little gazebos with vines and flowers dripping from everywhere. That's,
Oh, I would go there as
yeah.
well. Amazing. Thank you so much, Veneta. It's been a joy. Let everyone know where they can find you. I'm going to link everything in the show notes or description anyway, but just, your Instagram, your anything you want to share if people want to follow you or contact you or hire you.
Yeah, I think the quickest thing is on Instagram for V for Veneta. I'm working on all the other platform stuff, but that's the one. I also have one called Permission, Purrr Mission, which is sort of this reviving of this Catwoman and sensual embodiment, shadow feminine archetype, and that'll probably be cultivated a little bit more. But V for Veneta is the best place on Instagram.
Beautiful. And just to tell everyone, you're such a good person to follow because you obviously share a lot of value, but you also share so many fun things. It's like very enjoyable to follow you.
Aw, thanks, love. Really appreciate it. So sweet
um,
to connect with you.
I absolutely love having these conversations because every story really reminds us that you can use any experience for your evolution, not just your breakdown. It also shows us that transformation is never linear. It's personal, it's messy, and it's what makes us human. I'm Lorena Schuth, and this was Identity Evolution. Come and find me on Instagram at Lorena Schuth, linked in the show notes, and DM me and share your key takeaway from this episode with me. I would love to know. You'll also find guest links and details in the show notes if you want to connect more deeply with them. And you'll also find my self-concept coaching program, Recreate Yourself, if you are feeling ready for your identity shift. If this episode stirred something in you, make sure you subscribe and ideally leave a quick review and rating wherever you are listening or watching. This really, really helps more people find these stories of self-reinvention. See you next time.